Legacy Sailing. Brought to you by South Bay Marina in Green Bay and WSW Logistics and McDonald Companies. Thank you for your support. Coming up in this episode of Legacy Sailing, we will take a look at the latest project, a 1962 box sailboat that will be restored in preparation for a trip on the Great Loop. Let's watch as we show how to remove a skeg-mounted rudder on a trailered sailboat, right in the backyard, without a crane. Later, we will discuss potential causes and solutions to issues in a fiberglass rudder found after removal. It's always time to sail or get ready for next season out on the water. You'll see all this and more in this episode of Legacy Sailing.
Before we take a look at the method of removing the rudder, I kind of wanted to introduce you to the exterior of the vessel before we take a look at the stern and rudder section. And you know, it's a nice little cabin cruiser. A couple slight modifications specifically related to adding an additional porthole and about 18 inches in the center of the cabin just to make it more convenient. So I wanted to take a look specifically at how we remove the rudder in this situation where we don't have a way to remove the vessel from the trailer. I mean, at least not safely. There's lots of folks that have the equipment and the technique and the talent and the experience and expertise. But let's assume for a moment that you have your trailerable vessel home. You want to take your rudder off, and you don't have all of those things. So how we did it was, we first had to measure the distance from the stem all the way up to the top of the rudder stock so that we could understand how far to drop it. Then, depending on the terrain where you're parking your vessel, we took the distance from the rudder to the ground and subtracted it from that stem amount. Then, that's how far we knew to dig the hole. You can see that before we dug the hole, we blocked up. We were readily able to support the rudder before we took the rudder heel off. This is really important, and it's also important to note that, you know, especially on the older boats, usually these things are made of metals that are expected to not react and be able to spend long periods underwater. So you're going to see that they're going to be made of brass oftentimes, like this one is. So that also means something else that's really important. This is also brass. This skeg is actually a stem pipe made of brass, and it utilizes brass fasteners, or some fastener that's not going to experience galvanic reaction. I guarantee you that if you don't take the time to get containers, mark them, and understand your surroundings before you begin, you know, the bad thing about leaves and sand and dirt is you're going to lose those fasteners, and it might be difficult to purchase those in the store near you. So once you get this removed, what we're going to do is we're going to gently get in the back of the rudder and remove the blocks, lower the rudder down, and take a closer look. Also, I wanted to note that one of the primary reasons why we're removing the rudder is it was easy to recognize that although this is somewhat inaccessible at the moment, there has been some epoxy repair on this rudder previous, and I've kind of picked away, and you can kind of hear from that sound that's definitely an area we want to take a closer look at. We can see that there's been some rudder repair previously, it looks like, possibly cut out due to water intrusion and maybe cracking and freezing. Also, there's some evidence of cracks, but we'll take a closer look at all of that once we get the rudder removed and up on a sawhorse and take a closer look. Now, I should point out, one of the most important things to remember when we're removing the rudder is to not allow the stem to move rapidly or considerably in any one distance away from the axial center. We don't want to loosen or damage the hull or the fiberglass or the seal around the rudder tube or the associated bearing. Also remember to have your gloves on, because if this rudder has been maintained, there's going to be grease around the rudder stock, that lubricates that brass-to-brass contact between the rudder pipe or the rudder tube and the rudder stock. In fact, on these older boats, what I like to do is when I first get it, take a look inside the after area where the steering mechanism is, or in this case with a tiller, simply the rudder tube. Take a look and see if there's a simple grease fitting or a zert on the rudder tube itself. It's probably a good idea to put a couple spots of grease in there, or maybe even once you get the tiller and the bracket off, squirt a little lubricant or penetrant down from the top. Now, if my simple calculation was correct, I should be able to lower the rudder all the way down into this hole without damaging the rudder, and also completely removing it from the hull of the boat. As you can see, as I was saying before, there's a lot of grease on here, and you just want to be careful of that because it's kind of slippery, and you don't want to get injured or also damage the rudder in any way. Okay, so we've got the rudder on a set of sawhorses so that we can do a more thorough inspection. You can see there's grease all along. It's definitely time to do a little cleaning and an inspect on the brass. But all in all, not too bad. Doesn't look like there's been a lot of wear, so I happen to know that this specific boat has gotten a lot of use over the years, so I would say that the evidence of grease is actually evidence of good maintenance. Now, that said, remember when the rudder was installed to the hull, I had said that I had noticed in my initial inspection some questionable areas. One of the things I wanted to point out was, before I removed the rudder, I made a mark with the Sharpie, and really that was just some permanent marker that I knew I would be able to use as a reference. And I wanted to make sure that in the event I do some fiberglass repair and lay some mat, I don't want to increase the thickness here. It was pretty short and pretty close. Always make a note of that. This would be about as far. I want to be zeroing down to here in my taper when I'm adding material. It's pretty good up here. There's all kinds of space, but once we get down into this area, you could actually damage the fiberglass, the new fiberglass that you just installed. Now, here we've got some examples of some fracture in the fiberglass. Actually, we can even, I don't know if you can see that, we can actually get it to move a little bit. It feels like there's a stiffening member here. I don't know what the exact design of the rudder is, but just running my hand over it, I'm thinking that there's a stiffener here, possibly some sort of frame here, and then something coming out from the stem here. So we're going to be cutting this open and taking a closer look to inspect the inside, make sure that there isn't any waterlogged areas or rot, and also to make sure that we've cleaned it all up and made it ready for solid adhesion. Now, that area that we couldn't quite see before, now that it's up, we can see it's definitely an area that not only is hollow, but was accessible to water rolling down the hull if it rained, or water in the back splashed up onto the rudder here. So this is definitely going to be an area that we're going to want to take a closer look at once we open up the side skin. And then once we're all done, we're gonna take our tools and we're gonna abrade this out, and I'll show you what we're gonna be doing there later, and fill that up with epoxy so that we don't get water in there ever again. So this is the inside of the vessel. There's a lot of work, but it's got really good bones, and this is a Bach, as I had said before, a 1962 Bach. Not a lot of these were built back in the 60s. The original manufacturer was actually started via two brothers, the Clement brothers. They were twins that owned a washing machine or laundry machine manufacturing company down in Toledo, Ohio. A very successful business in the area, and very accomplished manufacturing leaders in their own right. Carl, the one brother, had a passion for boating and always desired to have his own boat building business. So he commenced to build the vessels like the one we see here. At some point, I'm not sure if Carl became ill, left the company, passed on, but at some point his brother decided that the boats were too well built and that it would be impossible to maintain the level of quality and also the level of customer service that his brother Carl insisted on in the design of these hand-laid fiberglass boats, and also make a profit. The boats came with custom-made trailers. It's apparent that they had their own casting or forging or paid a considerable amount of money for another company to do it, because even the trailer has custom emblems, forged name in the housings of the suspension and axles, and each of the axles on this tandem trailer are independent, nothing solid. And it's amazing, actually, just to see the trailer under this boat articulate in uneven terrain. In our next episode, we're going to spend a little more time on the rudder, do some fiberglass exposure, cutting open and exposing the inside of the rudder, and then we're going to get into some fiberglass repair, utilizing some epoxies and also some polyurethanes and polyesters. So with that, thank you for staying on with us and spending time learning about backyard boat building and how to do your own maintenance and repair, especially on your trailerable vessels. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, but most importantly, take notes, take snapshots. I'll do my best to make sure that our footage is pertinent and shows those key images so that you can go back to your vessel, back to your marina, or back to your backyard and confidently perform some of the same maintenance that we're going to do here. We'll be sharing the progress of this vessel throughout the coming months. The vision is to do a total restoration and or modernization with the intent of taking this vessel on a great loop journey of its own. Have a great day, and don't stop sailing.